When 96-year-old Clint Eastwood released his final film, Juror number 2, critics praised it, but almost immediately it triggered a massive, heated debate among online audiences. Viewers took to forums to rip apart the movie's courtroom logic. They pointed out glaring plot holes, an almost total lack of forensic evidence, and a jury that rushes to a shockingly fast conviction against a defendant with a flimsy case against him. For fans of legal thrillers, the biggest offense is that the film seems to completely ignore the bedrock of the justice system. The jury never seriously debates the concept of reasonable doubt. Yet, people who have actually served on juries recently chimed in with a very different take. They argued that a room full of exhausted, frustrated people rushing a verdict just to go home is a hyper-accurate depiction of the process. Curious, it creates a strange contradiction. The man who spent decades playing iconic enforcers dealing out swift, absolute punishment chose to end his cinematic career with a story where the legal system is a messy, complete failure. These perceived flaws represent a calculated, final act of subversion. Eastwood is using his last film to dismantle the very myths of infallible justice he spent a lifetime building. To understand why he would tear down that myth, you have to look at how it was built. Eastwood started in the trenches of the studio system, working as a contract actor in 1950s television westerns like Rawhide. He broke out of those television constraints to become a global icon, defining the strong, silent loner archetype through the Dollars trilogy and the Dirty Harry franchise. For audiences, those characters offered a comforting fantasy. They lived in a world where right and wrong were clear, and justice was dealt swiftly by men who relied on hard-earned instinct instead of waiting on broken institutions. He cemented a cinematic myth of righteous individual vigilantism, and once he stepped behind the camera, he dedicated the rest of his career to picking that exact myth apart. As a director, he developed what became known as the Malpaso Way. It's a production philosophy of extreme efficiency that runs completely counter to the bloated, expensive practices of modern Hollywood. He relies on minimal takes, classical camera composition, and understated editing. He sets a strict schedule, he films what he needs, and he consistently finishes his movies under budget. Even his notoriously quiet, relaxed movie sets have a practical origin. He developed the habit of never shouting action or cut, specifically to avoid spooking horses on crowded Western shoots early in his career. As he aged into his 80s and 90s, he adopted a simple guiding philosophy to keep working: do not let the old man in. That persistent curiosity is what drove him to keep making unpretentious, mid-budget dramas for adults. Long after major studios abandoned stories exploring deep moral gray areas, Eastwood kept delivering them. Stripping away the spectacle allowed him to focus entirely on raw performance and sharp institutional critique. That direct, unflashy approach leads right to the minimalist aesthetic we see in Juror number 2. Viewed through that lens, the frustrating tension of the trial exposes the procedural fault lines of the institution, highlighting a system where justice is secondary to human self-preservation. The protagonist's desperate attempts to guide the jury toward his preferred outcome mirror the messy reality of the courts. The truth is elusive, and the mechanics of law and order are easily manipulated by personal ambition from the inside. There is a poetic irony here. The actor who made his name playing vigilantes operating outside a flawed law to find justice ends his career directing a story about an ordinary man manipulating the law from the inside just to escape it. Behind the scenes, Warner Brothers gave the movie a highly restrictive release, screening it in fewer than 50 domestic theaters and refusing to report box office numbers before pushing it to streaming. That decision to quietly bury a highly acclaimed film by a legendary director only validates Eastwood's deep, career-long cynicism about the priorities of modern institutions. He outlasted his peers, maintained his independence, and stepped away from the camera entirely on his own terms. By keeping the old man out, Clint Eastwood managed to deliver one final thorny provocation to American audiences.